Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. I believe I am live on all my social platforms. This is Coach Paula, your life transitions coach. I am here for Sunday evening, 7 and 7. So, hey, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be sharing with you all. And today is January the 14th. I am continuing my segment this month talking about the loss of my mom. And so tonight's segment, this is week two. So tonight I actually want to focus on the life-giving joy of being a grandmother and share part of my mom's story. If you listened last week, I shared about my mom, how she passed away on my birthday, January 16th of 2009 or 2009. And I just want to share some background about that, but also bring it from the angle of the life-giving joy of being a grandmother in my 7 minutes. So let me see if I can do this. Okay. So, one of the things I wanted to share was that I actually think I'm on my wrong platform, but that's okay. I'm live. One of the things I wanted to share was that when I was a little girl, I was around 1978, my mom, she went into the hospital. She had kidney cancer, and she was only supposed to be in the hospital for like, a week or so to get one of her kidneys removed. She went into the hospital the day after my birthday, so in January, and she didn't come out until Good Friday. I think Good Friday was actually maybe almost in April that year. There were considerable complications, and they didn't expect for her to live, but she did. And one of the things during the course of her sickness was that she prayed and she asked God to help her to live so that she could see her last two children, which I shared. I'm a second generation child of my mom and dad, and she wanted to see both my brother and me grow up to be an adult. And she prayed, she asked God to spare her life in that regard to see us grow up. And sure enough, God did that. And my brother, he lived to be 19 and he passed away. That's another focus for another story. But then, she got to see me as an adult. And so, as an adult, when I had my first son, my mom was his caregiver. He didn't know anything about going to daycare. And so she enjoyed taking care of him and being his primary caregiver. She did the same thing with my second son, and it was beautiful. And so now, when I'm pregnant, 35, I'm pregnant with my third child, that same cancer that my mom had, she went to the hospital, went to the doctor, she wasn't feeling well, and sure enough, they said that in the area where they had removed her kidney, that there was a slow-growing cancer. Now, mind you, I said I was 8, and so there was a slow-growing cancer that entire time, and sure enough, when they found it, it was stage 4, and they said that it was a mass, a slow growing mass. And they said to her that she would have approximately 3 to 6 months to live. And so my mom was like, 3 to 6 months. She's like, my child is having a baby. I'm looking forward to this child. And, they told her that they told my mom she shouldn't lift more than 5 pounds. And she's like, oh, I think this is going to be a big baby. I have to care for him, on and on. And so sure enough, I'm like, well, mom, God's been gracious, to us. Definitely have lived to be an adult. And so the fact that you've had this slow growing cancer like all these years is nothing but the goodness of God to protect you and all. And she's like, oh no, but I have to live, I'm his grandmother and I have to care for him. And I have to, she just went on with these affirmations, how this child was giving her a reason to live. And so sure enough, my son was born, and I said to my mom, well, I'm going to put him in daycare. She's like, no, you're not. She's like, I'm going to care for him. Well, he was 7 pounds and 14 ounces at birth. And I'm like, well, mom, you're not supposed to lift more than 5 pounds. And she's like, I don't care. Give me the baby. Give him to me. And she would hold and nurture on my son and just love on him in ways that only a grandmom could, right? And it was just amazing to watch how he was a life-giving agent for her. And so sure enough, I said, "Okay, mom." I was working from home during that time. So I'm like, "All right, you can come over, you can help me with watching the baby." He's like, "Okay, perfect," And so she was here and she would help me, or sometimes I would go and work from her home. And it was just a great opportunity for her to spend with this grandson of mine, of hers. And so she would care for him. And over time, he started getting bigger, started getting, moving around. And it was maybe too much for her. And so I said to her, so Mom, I think he's getting to be too much. He's a heavy kid, and I think now we should consider putting him in daycare. No, no, he can't go in daycare. Gosh. Yeah, Mom, he can. And so my sister, my oldest sister at the time, she had a daycare. And so I said, well, why don't we let him go to her? He'll still be with family. He'll be around people that he loves. And, it'll be an opportunity for you to get a break, and so forth. So we finally convinced my mom that it was okay for my son to go to my sister's for daycare. I'll never forget that Monday when I had to drive him from, my house over to my sister's daycare, and my mom's doing a whole radio check with me. Did you pack his favorite toy? Did you have this? Do you have that? I'm like, yes, ma'am. Yes, yes, I have everything. She's like, okay, well, he likes this. And did you do this? And what is he wearing? Then I'm like, oh my gosh, I know how to take care of my child. So sure enough, I go to pull up to my sister's house to drop my son off. And guess who's sitting outside? At my sister's house, my mom in her car. And I'm like, "What are you doing here?" And she's like, "Well, Maxwell's coming here, and so I need to be here." Like, "What?" She's like, "Yeah, Max is coming, and I need to make sure that he's okay." And I'm like, "Mom, you do not need to be here." She's like, "Yes, I do. Yes, I do." She's like, "You know how sometimes in school, certain kids might have a student aide or a teacher's assistant." She's like, "That's what I am for Maxwell. I have to make sure that he's okay. I have to make sure that they know how to take care of him and all." And I'm like, "Okay." I just felt it was really funny. So sure enough, she cared for him. She would have them lift him up for her, and she loved on him. And needless to say, he was a baby, an infant at that time. My mom passed away on my birthday in 2009. My son was born in November of 2005. And so for more than 3 years, a little over 3 years, her life was extended. What should have been, according to the doctors, 3 to 6 months was extended because of the life-giving joy of being a grandmother. It's part of my memories in the loss of my mom. And my question to you is, what gives you life? What gives you a life-giving joy that sustains you and even amid circumstances and difficulties and challenges still powers you on to move forward? I encourage you this week to reflect on that, just as I've reflected on my mom, and I'll be reflecting on her all week, with this being my birthday week and memorializing her passing on my birthday. I'll be reflecting this week, and I want you to do the same. What is your life-giving joy? Is it being a grandmother? Is it helping others? Is it being a mom? Is it something you do at your job? What is that? Discover what that is and let the life-giving joy of that come in your life. I'm over my 7 minutes, but I hope I've shared something that has shifted your energy and awakened your potential. It's always a great thing to share with you. And I'll see you back next week. Take care.